Hi friends, my name is Eric. I'm just talking with famous people, and I want to make and will upload and publish here after I make it this musings video. Not something I've been doing much of lately. I've been trying to be more purposeful in my uploads towards optimizing them more towards what people are going to have a very positive experience in totality with, which is to say, like a short cat video of me going, pet my cat again. I can't wait to pet my cat again. Seems I've got no more meowy good a friend. Now I'm going to pet my cat again. And then I pet my cat. You know, it's a video of the cat, not of me. The cat's a lot more pleasant to look at. So I've been doing a lot of that stuff because it makes people happy. It makes people happy, and it gets views, and it's easy. It's more resonant with my NI overarching value. This video is not that. Okay, this video is going to be a little bit slow. It's going to ask you for patience. It's going to talk. This video is directed to INFJs, really, more than anybody else. INFJs are uniquely capable of recognizing when a certain thing requires a certain kind of attention. They can tell when something needs a certain amount of patience from the listener and ought to be afforded that. So I haven't gotten to my point yet because I'm doing a bunch of meta framing or whatever. But my point is this. People are extremely traumatized. I've got multiple points here, and that's why this is not a regular video, right? It's not an upload that's meant to be a successful upload. It's an upload that's meant to serve my need to talk shit out. So I've got multiple points, but one of them is when people are traumatized profoundly in childhood, this is what happens. For any child, it is appropriate for them to believe. They should, as a parent, you are obligated to make them believe, whether it's true or not, and it should be absolutely true, that you would not be okay without them being okay at the moment. In other words, if they're in some kind of distress, you're not okay as a parent. If you don't experience that as a child, if your parent's not like that, then you're like that. You demand that as an adult. You say, I need you to not be okay anytime I'm in distress. And how that plays out in an intimate relationship with where you were somebody with BPD is that the BPD person will hate you being happy by yourself because it means you're not checking on their state of being and making sure they're okay before you're happy, which you should if you're a parent, but not if you're an adult, right? Not if you're dealing with a healthy relationship between adults. In other words, I need Rachel, but I don't need her to be happy right now, right? It's like Rachel's in there sleeping. If I knew Rachel was in a lot of distress, then obviously that would be my priority. But if I don't have reason to think she is in distress, I'm going to be perfectly happy by myself. I don't need her to be happy, right, in any given moment. For somebody who suffered a lot of trauma as a child, they don't get this idea that if you're happy without them, you can still need them in a more complicated way, right? They never are able to get past the fact that they're currently in distress, because they're kind of always in distress, because it's hard to get over or get past or heal that kind of profound trauma from childhood that affects. It's not just an experience. It's a ontology shaper. It shapes your basic map, like the basic map that everybody should share is different for you because you haven't had that experience of what every child should be able to expect, that their parent's not okay if they're in distress. So the problem is, if you're constantly in distress, then you're expecting somebody to play that role of constantly not being okay until they verify that you're okay. That they don't get to have their own emotional space, basically. So, I can tell a story about Judy and Paul going to visit Darlene and Jacob, okay? So, Darlene and Jacob are in this weird relationship where one of them has been deeply traumatized as a child and has BPD and is expressing this thing where it's like, you being happy by yourself and doing what you want to do makes me angry because it says to me that you don't need me. And the thing is, you've got Jacob, who's an INFJ, who's using FI and FE constantly to deal with the world. So he kind of is constantly checking to make sure somebody's okay. She constantly is never okay. He's constantly taking FE kind of measures to husband her emotional state, and at the same time intuiting two contradictory realities. Jacob recognizes the value of Darlene, loves her, and he's been with her for a long time, and concurrently that this can't be good, right? This isn't healthy. This is, it's like, at the same time, there's an intuition that says, it's the healthiest thing it can be given the circumstances or something. Well, ultimately, what I've concluded is that INTJs, what they really need, what everybody really needs, is to wallow in their seventh slot function. It's their least conscious and, in some sense, most absolute value. And so, if you're an INFJ who's doing it wrong, you're constantly tending to a BPD person and trying to manage the size of a fire that's constantly burning. If you're an INFJ who's doing it right, then you're bearing the cross that Rachel bears, which is, even though you're with an incredibly intuitive guy, namely me, he still doesn't get most of the time just how incredibly useful you are. Rachel is insanely useful. And this is one thing I want to say to Peter Dentici and everybody, all you other crazy NI people. Okay, DMT has taught me a lot. Fine. It's taught me a lot about NI, about why it is that INFJs in particular. Now, I'm not saying Peter Dentici's an INFJ, but he's definitely an NI type, Seems that way to me anyway. I won't say definitely. But when you've gone hard on Dimitri, when I've gone hard on it, and I think this is fairly consistent for a lot of people, you experience this incredible clarity, the truth of which is poundingly obvious, and which gets lost as you try to explain it. It's in some sense why, for me, the ultimate juiciness in terms of things I make is in concision, because it's capturing that NI holistic, clear, poundingly clear truth, obvious truth, and it's making it more communicable via utilizing the mechanism of NI concision to render it into something more reducible, like to render a holistic thing into something more reducible. But here's the deal about Jacob and Darlene and Judy and Paul is my absolute values are N's and F's. Both Judy and Jacob's absolute values are N's and T's as INFJs. Yesterday, when Judy and Paul went to Jacob and Darlene's house, Paul declared it the promised land, the land of milk and honey, the coming of the day, the second coming of the day, and it was good, but it was good. It was incredibly satisfying. So here's the thing: Paul is not very good about maintaining friendships, being the person to reach out to the other person. He waits for, I love friend Mia, says Paul, but I forget about friend Mia and don't contact them. But Paul's an ENTP, and what really, really matters is FI to him. He doesn't really realize this unless he's super, super realized and actualized, which Paul is, but by and large, ENTPs don't realize this, but that's what really matters. So what's going to happen is that Paul's going to call Jacob again soon. He's going to actually initiate contact and say, I want to come over and play again. And Jacob's going to go, cool. I want you to come over and play again. The thing is, Jacob and Judy are the same type. And Jacob is carrying this cross incorrectly. The cross to bear of the INFJ is supposed to be nobody notices how useful you are because the way you're being useful is so field-like. Like, nobody recognizes how useful the soccer field is being. But, but when you're really gratified and satisfied and happy in life, it's because on some level you intuitively know for sure how useful you are. And ideally, others recognize it too, to validate the fact that you're right, if nothing else, right? INFJs, their feelings are countervalued. It's like how they feel and how others feel, both those issues, are what they do at work all day. So they're not absolute values. But for ENTPs, those Fs are what we ENTPs do, Paul, me, other ENTPs, we do the T stuff all day at work. We don't want, that's not where the juiciness is. So, problem is, an INFJ has this ultimate clarity that I experience sometimes on BMT. But that's their basic operating principle, is that thing. That kind of clarity. So who are the most actualized, realized, developed, intelligent, wise INFJs on the planet? The ones who are watching my channel. And the reason for that is because they've tacitly acknowledged by watching my channel that maybe their intuition isn't the ultimate metaframe. That maybe there's some map that accounts for their clarity, and that, sometimes their intuition might be wrong, and they can intuitively know why and when and how and themselves in ways that are vastly superior to just having that intuitive clarity. And the thing is, In this story, we've got Jacob, who's operationally telling stories about how things are, and also intuitively knowing 99% of the time that the picture he's painting is the picture people are buying and owning. But he's also very intuitive, and he knows that on some level he knows that Paul is not susceptible to these stories in the same way that other people are, and that in certain instances Paul will point out some obvious truths that the INFJ ultimately can't fight against. One of the unique qualities about INFJs, it is difficult for them to lie to themselves or their significant other or anybody else because of that clarity, right? When you have that much clarity about the truth, especially when it's related to feeling stuff, it's hard to be okay with telling yourself lies. Now, the ultimate polar character on TV that I love is the ESFJ mom in Bob's Burgers, who's willing to accept anything as the story is just as good as any other story. And it's like when one time she can't go to, she falls asleep or something or misses the second half of a movie, and then she has the kids tell her what happened. She just believes all this nonsense. She's, oh my God, really? Exploding scone. And she's just sort of oblivious in this wonderful way. But the opposite of that is to be unable to avoid the truth when it's like that kind of clarity is pounding. And so what happened earlier tonight was I had that kind of clarity of, I smoked some DMT, of course, and then just skip past part one there, and then as usual, I felt cold and it was too bright in here, so I went and lay down in the bed in the dark. That's the number one thing that happens like every time. Is the only commonality really is I'm cold and it's too bright in here. So anyway, I went and laid down in the bed in the dark, and it was just, the problem is I had this huge elephant in the room, which is this clarity about these four people that I'm talking about, namely Jacob, Darlene, Judy, and Paul. The missing piece in this foursome was Judy. With Judy in place, you've got an individual who's an INFJ, who's in some sense out INFJing Jacob, because she understands. Jacob's a 3 Enneagram too, I should mention. So he likes to attain on conventional metrics and show you, look at me, I've mad, right? Well, Judy's perfect at recognizing just how special Jacob is, just how genius his stuff is, just how right he is in his intuition, just how amazing a person an INFJ can be, while at the same time having so little clarity about their own soul. And this whole experience has just given me insane insight into this huge elephant in the room, which for me is an unavoidable elephant in the room, because I really empathize with Paul, and I also empathize with Jacob and with Darlene and Judy. And the huge elephant in the room is, for Paul, F is the absolute value. So it's like, this toxicity happening between people I love is distressing to me. And And it's like I never before had the capacity to understand what was going on. But now I understand it very clearly. What's happening is Jacob's wallowing in being continually useful to somebody who needs him in an unhealthy way. And as a consequence, he's not experiencing the right kind of ontological distress for the INFJ, which is I'm being useful and nobody notices or recognizes it because they aren't as attuned as I am to how these very subtle things I'm doing impact everything. So that's my video. Thanks for watching. It felt good to talk things out. I feel so. I mean, I know it's just they aren't me, Judy and Paul and Darlene and Jacob, but when I hear about their story, I read about it in the newspaper. When I hear about it, I think, wow, I really feel that, and I have an opinion about it.